Hi, everybody. It's Dr. Cinta. I hope you are well. And we are going to get started. We'll give a couple minutes for people to get on, but we are going to talk today about a very exciting topic, which is injectable medications for weight loss. So you barely have to have a pulse to know that this is something that people are talking about. It has been fantastic for our field. I think that it is one of these things where, it is a wonderful adjunct, but it's not the only thing. So, one of the things we'll talk about today is that there's other options out there as well. But super exciting. And we are going to start out just sort of talking about, I'll give you a little background on the drugs, and then I actually did get some questions already, so we'll talk about some of the questions that are out there. There are so many people on these weight loss medications, these injectable medications. They're called GLP-1s, and because of that, there's many questions that exist, and I've gotten a few already. So I'll go over what I've gotten, but if at any point in time you come up with something that you want me to answer, what we'll do is we'll answer them after the initial intro part, and then we'll do a myth busting part. So I will tell you, it drives me crazy when there's false information out there, and there is, unfortunately, so much information that is not really warranted or true or accurate, or it is embellished. So I want to make sure that we bust a lot of those myths and make sure that you guys have the right information so you can make a good decision about these medications. Okay, so let's see, it's 6:02. Well, let's get started, and people can join us as they go. But again, the hot topic today is weight loss injectables. So we're talking specifically about the ones that are out there right now: Mounjaro, Ozempic, Wegovy. By the way, those two are the same medications, the semaglutide. Those are the three big ones that are out there. They're weekly dosed GLP-1s. That's a fancy name for them. So, hi. Will this be recorded? It will be available, Shelly. Hi, Shelly. It's nice to see you. It will definitely be available, so you can go back and forward it to somebody and watch it later if you want to. So we will have it on our webpage with all the other lives we've done in the past. So, yeah. All right. So the medications: Wegovy, Ozempic, Mounjaro. These are the medications we're going to specifically talk about today. And I think it's really important to understand that even though this is a big new social media issue, something that you see all over the place, these drugs have actually, the GLP-1s, been around for diabetes since 2005. So this is something that doctors who are both family practitioners like myself have used for diabetes. That we used it back then for them for diabetes. We used the injections for diabetes in 2005, and then they came out in 2015 for weight loss. But you can understand the progression. If you've got a medication that is helping diabetes and people are losing weight on it, then it would make sense to start studying that drug for weight loss and then getting an indication for weight loss. So we'll talk about that. But that is actually a little tricky if you think about it, because if you're a company that also sells medications for diabetes and you're selling a weight loss medication which reverses diabetes, you can get yourself in a little bit of a pickle. And one company has, and that's why we have two drugs that are the same drug that are under different names. So we'll talk about that as well. All right, so we are going to go through this, and then we're going to bust some myths. And anytime along the way that you have any questions, just pop them up here and we'll answer them after we talk about the general topic of injectables. So first of all, what are injectables? So should I be leaving? Hi, Jen, how are you? Should I be leaving already while I'm starting? So injectables in general. So we've got Wegovy, we've got Mounjaro, we've got Ozempic. All of these are GLP-1. So what is a GLP-1? Basically, it's a medication that hits the receptors of GLP-1 in the brain, and those receptors make you less hungry, okay? Those receptors are also in the gut, so they affect insulin and how insulin is taken up, which can also affect hunger. The third thing they do, which a lot of people don't know, and it's really important because it can have to do with side effects, is they decrease how fast the food moves through your stomach and through your gut. So because of that, they can keep you fuller longer, but they can also cause problems with people who are fast eaters and getting really, really sick to their stomach. So you have to eat slow on these medications. So as I mentioned, these drugs have been out since 2005. There was the first drug that was approved for diabetes is a drug called Victoza, Byetta, that family of drugs. They were GLP-1s, and they were given every single day injections for type 2 diabetes. So those drugs were very, very helpful as an adjunct to other medications for diabetes. And what they found was people would lose weight on these meds and then not need their insulin and sometimes not need, a lot of the drugs and maybe even reverse their diabetes. So they started to study these drugs for weight loss. And the very first drug for weight loss, which was called liraglutide or Saxenda, came out in 2015. So you can see, even in the weight loss world, we've had these drugs for almost 8 years now. So we've written in our office hundreds and hundreds, maybe even thousands of prescriptions for these medications. So there's a lot of nuances to it, which we'll get into. So liraglutide actually had about a 5% weight loss in the studies for about 50% of the people. So that may not sound like a lot of weight loss, right? You weigh 100 pounds, it's 5 pounds, 200 pounds, 10 pounds, whatever. But that's enough to actually start to reverse obesity-related diseases like high blood pressure and cholesterol issues, and even, to lower your diabetes numbers, to maybe, start to reverse your sleep apnea, fatty liver, etc. So it was significant. And so now we started to use these injectables for weight loss. The first weekly injectable that came out was semaglutide or Ozempic. And this medication came out in December of 2015 or 2017. So again, that was what, 3, 4, 5 years ago, 5 years, almost 6 years ago. So this drug's been around for a while, and it was weekly dosed and better than Saxenda because not only did you not have to take it weekly or daily, you also had a drug that was a little bit had better weight loss and also had less side effects. So with the Ozempic, the weight loss was at the 1 milligram dose, which was the highest dose at that time, about 6%, 6.1%. But eventually, last year, they came out with a 2 milligram dose, which doubled that. So it got your weight loss up to about 12%. So that is really significant if you think about it. 200-pound person will lose if I'm doing my math right, 22 pounds, right? So I hope I got that right, around there, 24, 26. They say that the marbles come out when you start to stuff medicine. And so if you had any math skills, they're all long gone immediately after you become a doctor. But anyhow, so that was Ozempic. And then in June of 2021, so this is now, 4 years later, a drug comes out called Wegovy, which is exactly the same medication, semaglutide. Okay, so what's going on here? Why is Novo Nordisk, this company from Denmark, coming out with a drug that is the same drug, but now at a higher dose? So semaglutide that was sold as Wegovy, which was more than double the dose of Ozempic, got a huge amount of weight, 15% weight loss at the highest dose. What's going on though? Why are they doing this? Why are they marketing the same drug with two different names? Well, you're Novo Nordisk, you're an insulin company. That was what they became famous for. Diabetes company, already making injectables for diabetes. You want to get a piece of the weight loss market. You actually want to own both markets. So what you do is you create two different drugs studied at two different doses for two different diseases. Okay, so they own both drugs, but it's the same drug, semaglutide. Now, as I said, Ozempic came out with a 2 milligram dose last year. So now you've got both of these medications almost to the same dose, and it's exactly the same drug. So this is going to cause some controversy and has caused some controversy because we've had supply chain issues. And sometimes you can get Wegovy, sometimes you can get Ozempic. It's semaglutide either way. So doctors have kind of written it, for whatever they needed, which we can do as physicians. We're allowed to go off label with medications. So we can write a drug that was marketed as Wegovy for weight loss, but use it for diabetics. And we can write Ozempic, which is, again, the same drug for weight loss. So, but people have gotten very irritated by this because of the marketing thing, which, nothing's ever without controversy when a lot of people are using something. So, all right. So those drugs were, the Ozempic 2 milligrams got 12% weight loss. And then the 2.4, which is the Wegovy, got up to 2.4, and that got 15% weight loss. So again, you can see like these drugs are getting better with weight loss, and they also have less side effects. All right, last year, a new medication came out that was not owned by Novo Nordisk from Denmark. It was owned by Eli Lilly from the US, and this drug was called Mounjaro. And this is an incredible medication. The Ozempic and semaglutide are very good, but they have a lot more side effects, in my opinion, than the Mounjaro. And you have to go higher to get the weight loss that you see with Mounjaro at lower doses. So Mounjaro is also a GLP-1 agonist, so it hits those receptors that we talked about, but it has this new receptor called the GIP receptor. And this is, as doctors, we don't learn about all these millions of receptors, but what I can tell you is that it actually makes people not care at all about food. And you can get incredible weight loss at very low doses. So Mounjaro starts at 2.5 and goes all the way up to 15 milligrams, and you step up every 4 weeks by 2.5. Many people will get great weight loss even at the 5 milligram dose. Much fewer side effects I have found, and they just really don't care about food when they're on it. So for many people, that is a wonderful, new thing that in their life that they've never had. And so this is another reason why we see these drugs becoming so popular. And when the word gets out, look, I got this medication, I'm not even thinking about food at all, it's the greatest thing that ever happened to me, then the next thing you know, lots of people are interested. And then you've got competition between these two companies, one from Europe and one from the US, and supply chain things that are kind of, complicating the story. You can get this dose, but you can't get this dose, but you can get it of this other medication. So all of these things have played a role in just the craziness of what's going on with these injectables. All right. The weight loss with Mounjaro is 22.5%. So at the highest dose, it's way better than anything we've ever seen by adding that extra receptor. Okay. So to kind of summarize my viewpoint about this class of drugs, it is, they are great if you use them the right way. So, there's a lot of folks out there who are taking them inappropriately. And there's a lot of medical professionals that are writing them and not taking the time that's needed to titrate people so that they can tolerate the drug. So that's sort of my overall summary. And what bothers me probably the most right now is that you've got a lot of people going on these meds, but there's no nutrition plan that's combined with it. And I will tell you that I have never seen medications so strong that people literally have to remind themselves to eat. And some people don't eat. So when you start to hear terms like Ozempic face or, something like that, what you're really seeing is people who aren't eating, who are literally like starving. They're losing muscle. They're not getting enough protein in. And this is not the right way to lose weight and, and be able to do it in a healthy manner. So that is sort of, my summary about it. So let me just check real quick and make sure. Oh, Shelly's going out of town. Okay, got you. Thank you, Jen, for clarifying that. That's probably why she was asking if we could show this later. But we are going to keep this on Facebook Live. So if you don't catch it now, you can catch it later. It will be on our website at weightlosscny.com. Okay, so pros of these class of drugs, the GLP-1s. Number one is they really are generally very well tolerated. So yes, every once in a while I have a patient who just can't use them no matter what we do. We try doing different things and it just doesn't work. But by and large, just about everybody can tolerate them if you go slow enough. And we do have to sometimes slow down how fast we move up on these drugs. So normally they would tell you, take it at this dose, wait 4 weeks, then go to the next dose. Some people can't do that. Their body has to get used to the receptor stimulation. So we have to just kind of titrate it slower. And the way that we do that is we actually have a certain number of clicks that we know are in the pen, and we count the clicks, and we can get them up to doses between the doses of the regular titration. So we do a lot of that at our office. So anyhow, generally well tolerated. You saw from what I said, excellent weight loss. I mean, just really, really good weight loss with these medications. And those numbers, yeah, they had a diet plan in the clinical trials, but it wasn't like it was anything magnificent. The weight loss was really, mainly associated with the medication. So excellent weight loss. It makes many people indifferent to food, as I mentioned, and that can be good or that can be bad, right? Especially if you stop eating and there's not somebody monitoring you to make sure you're not losing muscle, and that you're not also, when you lose weight, you need to get off of some medications you're put on because of your weight, like blood pressure medicines for your diabetes, etc. So if someone's not medically monitoring you, you can get into trouble with some of those as well. But anyhow, so it makes you indifferent to food. Once weekly dosing, super convenient. If you've seen the pens, I wish I had one with me, but they're very straightforward. You take the pen. With the Ozempic, it has a little needle that you screw on. It's really pretty impossible to mess it up. You just take your tummy usually, and you push the pen. You hold it for 10 seconds. Let go. You're done for a week. That's it. The Wegovy actually has, it's super easy because the needle's in there and you push down and the needle comes out, and it turns yellow when you're done. So you know exactly when you're done. Mounjaro, very, very similar, very easy. So the needles don't hurt. They're easy to use. You throw them away when you're done, and it's just once a week. So all those things are great. The other thing too that I will say is, as we mentioned, they can reverse your diabetes and other weight loss disease or other weight related diseases. Okay. High cholesterol, diabetes, hypertension, sleep apnea, fatty liver. Like there's 147 conditions that are related to your weight that can potentially be reversed with weight loss. So this one drug can potentially get you off of so many others. So I love that about just any weight loss medications in particular. This last thing I'm going to say is super important, and that is, it will help you. These drugs will help you keep the weight off long term, but you have to take them long term. So if you think you're gonna, go on this medication, lose some weight, and then stop them and be just fine, it's not going to happen. Your body is always going to try to bounce you back up to your set point. So staying on the drugs, which have been proven now for 17 years to be effective medications and safe medications by and large, you want to be able to stay in it long term. So anyhow, those are the pros. The cons. Okay, so here's where we really got to talk about what's real and what's not. Okay, so the cons are this. If you are a fast eater or a binge eater, you really have to slow down how fast you eat, because how slow the transit time is with these medications. If you do not, and you try to stuff food in, it's going to come right back out, because it's not the whole neurological and mechanical process of moving food through your gut is going to be slowed down. You can't override that by eating more. So that is something that we have to deal with a lot with people who are binge eaters, etc. Okay, and then there are conditions where you cannot take these drugs. If you're someone who has like irritable bowel with chronic constipation, you don't want to take these drugs. They're going to make your constipation even worse. Okay, and then it'll be something that you have to deal with even more so. If you've ever had pancreatitis, if it was related to gallstones and your gallbladder removed, that's fine. But if you've ever had pancreatitis for other reasons, you cannot take these drugs. If you've ever had a bowel obstruction, I would recommend highly against it, or a condition called gastroparesis, which commonly comes along with diabetes, and it's again a slowing of how fast food moves through your gut. If you've had any of those things, you can't take them. As I mentioned, that you have to sometimes go slower than the titration tells you to do. And if you do that and you kind of learn the nuances of doing that, almost everybody can tolerate these medications. But that is a con. You do sometimes have to go a little bit slower. I will tell you again that it has to be paired with a high protein diet, and you have to watch people, make sure they're eating, because I have literally had to take people off of the high dose of Ozempic sometimes and bring them back to a lower dose because they're not eating. And then if they do eat, they'll eat something bad for them, which can actually cause problems both with weight loss and also just with nutrition. You need to have some protein to support your muscle. So that's something that kind of irks me. They're very expensive. If your insurance does not cover GLP-1s, it's going to cost you out of pocket somewhere between $1,200 and $1,500 a month. Okay, so if you don't have coverage, it's going to cost you a fair amount of money. And then the other issue from a con is there's been supply chain issues. So we have trouble sometimes getting certain doses, which is very frustrating for patients. And then you have to make decisions about what to do. Now, those last two problems that I just mentioned are actually being taken care of by the FDA's recent approval of compounding pharmacies and allowing them to make these two drugs and distribute them. So the cost of compounding is a lot less, and the availability now gives us a whole nother area to get them from other than directly from the pharmaceutical company. So those are my thoughts about pros and cons. All right, so let me just make sure I don't have any questions yet on here. If you have them, put them in. What I'm going to do is go through some questions that we got already. All right. So the first one that I got in my questions was from Damien, and he asked, how long can you use the weight loss injectables? And I think I answered this already, but you can use these, and you should use these long term, just like you use I'm having a hard time talking tonight. Just like you use medications for hypertension or high cholesterol or diabetes, you don't stop at antihypertensive because your blood pressure is good. You stay on that medication to keep your blood pressure good unless you lose weight, then you get off it. So anyhow, they're meant to be used long term. If they're used long term, they will help you maintain that weight loss long term. So if you're going to start them, you should stay on them. All right, next question is, this is from Kristen, does everyone get nausea and vomiting on this meds? Is that how you lose weight? The nausea and vomiting can definitely increase the weight loss, but it's not the way you lose the weight or the right way to lose the weight. So the way that you lose the weight is you take in less food because the GLP-1 receptors make you fuller quicker. So that is how you lose the weight. And no, not everybody gets nausea and vomiting. I have some people that just march right up to the high dose of these medications and have no problems at all. And then there's some people, it's weird, but you get them to a certain dose and they can't get past it. And so you have to play around with it a little bit. And then there's some folks who, again, every once in a while you'll see someone who starts it and just we can't quite figure out how to get this medication to work for this person. So they're just someone that just is not going to be able to take it. But again, they're few and far between. I'm talking like maybe 1 in 100 I've had of those type of people where they just can't do it at all. Most people can do these medications at least at the lower doses and get some weight loss from them. So they are a great class of drugs. Here's a question on here from Kathy. Is there a benefit of switching from Ozempic to Mounjaro? That is a good question. Okay, so I will tell you that at a lower dose with the Mounjaro, you'll get better weight loss and you'll have less side effects. But here's the thing that you have to really pay attention to, and that is if your insurance is covering Ozempic already and you're getting good weight loss, I wouldn't switch over and try to get them to cover the Mounjaro because, one of the biggest problems we have is just going through the whole coverage issue with these medications and prior auths and stuff like that. So now, if you're not getting coverage and you want to do compounding or something like that, the Mounjaro is more expensive, but at lower doses, you get better results. So, if that's your situation, you may want to think about that. Hopefully that answers your question for you. Okay, so the next question that I have is from Donna, and this is a great question. What do you do if you can't get your next dose? Okay, so let's talk about, give me one second here. Okay, let's talk about like dosing because we haven't talked about that. Okay, so for Ozempic, you start at 0.25, you do that for 4 weeks. Then you go to zero point 0.5, and then it just kind of keeps doubling. Then you go to 1 milligram again for 4 weeks, and eventually to 2 milligrams, which is the high dose for Ozempic. Wegovy, again, it's the same drug as Ozempic, but it just the dosing's a little different. So you start at 0.25, again 0.5, go up to 1, then 1.7, and 2.4 is the highest dose. 4 weeks again for each step up. Okay, Manjaro, 2.5 is the lowest dose. Then you go up to 5 milligrams. Now, I will tell you, a lot of people are doing great at the 5 milligram dose, and they're like, I don't really want to go any higher. Let's just stay here. And it's cheaper at the lower dose, especially for compounding. So many people will stay around that dose or the 7.5, but it goes up by 2.5 up to 15. With all of these drugs, you get better weight loss at higher doses. Okay, so to go back to this question, what do you do if you can't get your next dose? So we actually wrote an article about this. It's on our weight loss website, which is weightlosscny.com, and it's an article that's entitled, what do you do when you can't get your meds? But what I tell people is this: call around to different pharmacies, try to see if you can find it, because sometimes Kindies might have it, and Walgreens might not, or Walgreens might have one dose and Wegmans might have a different dose. But call around and see who has it. What we do oftentimes is have the person call, and then if a certain place has a dose, we send a prescription right away for that dose. I would, if you can't get it anywhere, and I would either stay at the current dose that you're on, or if if you're not tolerating that dose, step down. I would never, ever, ever go step up higher than what would be the next dose, because it will be completely disastrous. These drugs really need to go slow when you step up on them. So the other thing you can do is you can consider switching over to one of the other injectables, like from Ozempic to Mounjaro or vice versa. Or sometimes Wegovy. Like, it really has been crazy with supply chain, because sometimes we have Ozempic readily available, sometimes we have Wegovy readily available, and sometimes Mounjaro, but they've all gone through their issues. So you just have to kind of call around and see who's got it, and then grab it when you can. Okay. And then the other thing you can do is consider compounding. We're going to bring them into our office within the next month. It is about half the cost of, or even less than that, of the medications if you were to pay cost for them if they didn't get coverage. So that's another option as well. Okay. What if my insurance doesn't cover the meds? This is from Cindy. And what I would say is, you can always write a letter to your insurance company, or again, the phone with your insurance company. What we sometimes will do, we don't make this common practice, but if we have someone that we think will be a good candidate, we can, get them started on it, show some good weight loss, have them send that letter with the drug, and if we have time to get on with someone there who's a medical person, we can usually get it, covered, because you can show the weight loss. But also you can advocate for yourself. It is hard to do this at, through an office, because we just start, every office right now is short staffed. But you have rights too within your insurance company that can hopefully help you, what's the word I'm looking for? But basically to advocate for yourself. And use those rights, even if it's something that they don't initially cover. If you can show that you are doing well on this drug, oftentimes they'll rule in your favor. Okay, I got a question from Frank, and that is, what if you are moved up to a new dose and you can't tolerate it? So that does happen sometimes for folks, and what I just usually do is I will step it back to the previous dose and then maybe click it up to the halfway point. So for example, Ozempic 0.5, they can't do the 1. We'll click it up to the right number of clicks to get to 0.75, and we'll let them use that for maybe 4 weeks, and then move them up slowly to the next highest dose. I would never ever go up more than that. I would always go down maybe to the lower one, sometimes back to the original dose, and then slowly clicking back up to to where you want to be. And we do a lot of that. That's a really important piece of being able to tolerate these medications. Oh, yes, Jennifer, thank you. Yes, so right now, Manjaro is only covered for type 2 diabetes. I think I may have said that incorrectly. So, Ozempic is covered for diabetes, Wegovy for weight loss. Manjaro right now is still just covered for type 2 diabetes. However, if you get it compounded, you don't have to deal with the insurance company component of it, so you can get it for weight loss too. Now, Manjaro has been fast tracked through the FDA, so should get some type of coverage very soon by the FDA approval for weight loss. Approval and coverage are two different things, right? Approval means the FDA says you can use it for this, and then coverage says that your insurance company will pay for it. I will tell you that as physicians, when a medication is approved for one indication, we can write off label. We have our whole lives. We do it for antibiotics for children all the time and many other things. And so as long as we know that a drug is safe and effective, we then later can use it for other applications. So something like Manjaro, if I'm writing it through a compounding company, then I'll write it for weight loss. We know that's what it's for. It just happens to right now be FDA approved for diabetes, and so the insurance company will always follow that. But again, compounding will get you around that if you need to. Are the results different if you use compounded versus regular? No, I mean, actually I have seen that it is exactly the same medication. So even though it's not coming from the same manufacturing site, it's the exact same medication they're getting. So I have not seen there to be inferior weight loss with the compounding because it truly is the same thing. So hopefully that helps you, Gloria. And I think I have one more question. Oh, okay. So this is a great question that I'm glad Cindy asked, or Carolyn. Carolyn asked, I tried the GLP-1s and couldn't tolerate them. Are there other options? And the wonderful answer is yes. These are an adjunct. These are rarely, to be honest with you, my first choice because of approval, cost, supply. My very first choice for medication for weight loss, no matter what, is always going to be, especially with the population I deal with, phentermine. Phentermine has been around for, since the 1950s. So however many years that is, that's a very long time. And it is safe and effective. And what I love about this drug and why we dispense it at our office for free, by the way, there's no cost for it, is because it does increase metabolism. So if you're a woman who is in your 40s and you're starting to head into early menopause or premenopause, our metabolism drops and phentermine brings it back up and also controls hunger. The injectables do not help metabolism. So they're not going to take care of that issue. So phentermine, and then a short-acting version of phentermine called diethyl is another medication, diethylpropion, that we use at our office and we actually dispense. Contrave is an old medication. I shouldn't say old. It's not really that old. It's probably been around for 8 years or so. Seems old with all these other ones coming to the market, but that is medication that is Wellbutrin plus naltrexone, and I like it because Wellbutrin can help with the weight loss. It also helps with depression and seasonal affective disorder. If you live in Syracuse, you're probably experiencing that right about now because we haven't seen the sun too much this year. Hopefully now that summer's coming along, it'll come out and people will be a lot happier, but it doesn't affect your mood. So Wellbutrin helps with that. And then the naltrexone component does help with cravings and stuff. So the two together are powerful. The problem is, Contrave may not be covered. It isn't usually too expensive. It's about $100, I think. But it's a 4-week dosing, and it's 4 pills a day, 2 and 2, and you have to step up to that. So some people get really tired of the pill burden, and the injectables you can do once a week, so it's much better from that standpoint. And then there's other medications that we use to help with cravings, like Vyvanse and Topamax, and then naltrexone by itself can be used for cravings. And then another thing that can help increase metabolism, like phentermine, is not a weight loss medication, but using bioidentical hormones, which we do in our office to, I call it giving you a tune up, really kind of getting yourself, so that things are working like they were back in your 20s, can make a big difference with weight loss. So that's another option as well. So, okay, I think I got all the questions. I'm going to just go back up here and make sure I didn't miss anybody. I think we're good with that. Okay. All right. So let's do some myth busting and then we'll close. All right. So first of all, yes or no, is there something called Ozempic face? Is it real? Yes or no? I will tell you that the answer is no, it is not. That is the craziest thing I ever heard, Ozempic face. But I will tell you, so I have so many people on Ozempic, you can't look at their face and tell if they're on it. They don't walk around with these weird faces. But I think, this kind of highlights a problem that we talked about already, which is these drugs can make you not want to eat ever. So if you don't, if you're not really being carefully followed or not focusing on a good high protein nutrition plan to maintain your muscle mass and to make sure you're getting the appropriate vitamins and minerals, you can look like someone who's starving to death. So I think that if there is that type of condition, it can happen with anyone who's starving to get to death, regardless of the cause. So you have to eat on these things. And if someone's not eating and you're a provider who's writing these things, then you need to cut it back and you need to really focus on their nutrition plan. So, okay. Does everyone need to go on nausea medications while on that injectable? That's another myth I'm seeing out there. Yes or no? Does everyone need to go on Zofran if they're on these injectables? I actually did a Instagram on this because there was a woman who was writing, was going around saying, everybody has to go on these drugs to help with the nausea. But the answer is, you are right, Kathy. It is no. I don't think I've ever, to be honest with you, written a nausea medication for these drugs. Now, I've written hundreds of prescriptions and have not written one. And the reason is this: if someone's not, if someone is so sick that they're throwing up all the time, there's probably some underlying thing going on, because we really take our time to titrate these things. And if that's happening, then this is not the right drug for them. So no, I do not write those drugs to help with it. If you're giving someone a drug and you're writing a drug to counter that drug because of side effects, they shouldn't be on that drug. It doesn't matter what it is. That's my opinion on that one. Okay, here's another good one. Do people end up in the hospital due to bowel obstructions? Because that's another rumor that's been going around about these medications. So I will wait for you guys to answer. So far, you're doing great. It seems to me that maybe I might have skewed these in one direction, the yes or no part. But the answer to this is no. No! It's nonsense, I tell you. So I have never had a person end up in the hospital with a bowel obstruction. If you're getting a bowel obstruction on these medications, then you probably have an underlying condition like gastroparesis, like we mentioned in the beginning, and you should never have been put on it in the first place. So absolutely not. You don't have to worry about this. Everybody's got an uncle who knows somebody who had a bowel obstruction, but I'm going to tell you right now, again, as someone who's written a lot of these drugs for many, many years, I've never seen it. And it has everything to do with writing them slowly and also knowing when someone shouldn't be on them, because they might have something else going on. Okay. Are these drugs poorly tolerated? Yes or no? Are they poorly tolerated? Because that is what you're seeing. As a matter of fact, an article just came out today in The Atlantic, and it said something like, say goodbye to Ozempic, or Ozempic's days are over. And then they go back into all these myths again. So there's obviously, there's something political behind all this, where a paper like The Atlantic is all of a sudden writing this, and they keep rehashing this, even though those of us who write these drugs a lot have over and over again said that's not the case. Anyhow, and the answer is, you guys are correct. No. These drugs can be I would say, are mostly well tolerated and a wonderful adjunct to a weight loss program, but they have to be written and titrated appropriately for that individual. And, as I mentioned before, they have to be combined with a good nutrition and exercise program. especially nutrition program. All right, and then are injectables prohibitively expensive? Boy, this one could go either way, couldn't it? So I will just give you the answer because it's kind of a confusing question. But the answer is if you pay out of pocket and your insurance doesn't cover, and you pay directly to the pharmacy, the cost of the drug company, they're very expensive. As I mentioned, $1,200 to $1,500 a month. Now we have this wonderful option of compounding, which was recently approved by the FDA. And that is going to decrease the cost by more than half, I would say. And especially for Ozempic, it's going to decrease the cost a lot because that drug is a lot cheaper than the Mounjaro. So it will be a much more reasonable price for them. Both the Mounjaro, Wegovy, and the Ozempic are much cheaper if you get them compounding, but the Ozempic is really very, very reasonable. Okay, that's it. 40 minutes. We covered it all. If you have any more questions, just put them up there. I'll give you guys a second. And if not, I will say, for those of you who are patients at our office, keep your eyes open. We will be bringing compounding in. We are at the tail end of this. We've had some issues because literally the compounding pharmacies are short-staffed too. So we're having issues with them getting the drugs out on time. So this one company we were looking at, which was getting medications out every 3 days, is now every 4 weeks because this has been such a huge supply issue now. So we actually found one that's out of Nashville that will get it to us within 48 hours. The prices are reasonable. So we will be bringing them in very, very soon. Very, very, very soon. I got another one. Are there any side effects of injectables? Yes, Cindy. We will, let's go over those one more time. So the biggest side effect is nausea/vomiting. Or constipation. Every once in a while, I'll see someone who has a little diarrhea with it, but those are the main ones. There's ways to mitigate those side effects. With the nausea, we have people take them at nighttime, and then the next day you have to make sure you're eating. So you can't go the next day and not eat because you're feeling nauseous. It'll make it last longer, and it'll make the nausea worse. So you have to just make sure you're eating. I tell people, even though it's not on your diet plan, the day after you do injectables, have a couple saltines just to keep your stomach, coated, and slow down how fast you eat. If you're eating too fast, you're not putting your fork down in between bites, you're trying to wolf things down, it's going to be a lot worse. So you just got to go slow and take your time. Okay. You're welcome, Kathy. So I'll conclude this, and if you guys have any specific topics you want to talk about, you can DM me through Facebook, through Instagram. Hopefully you've seen that we have a medical weight loss Instagram site and a medical weight loss Facebook, which you're on. So feel free to contact us through those sites and give us some ideas about future topics you'd like. And if you have any questions that you decided came up afterwards, just pop them right in here and we'll answer them when we get them. All right. So thank you for joining me, and I hope this was helpful. And share it with friends if you have friends that are looking into this type of thing. And I just hope you guys all have a great night. Take care now. Bye.